Welcome everyone to Legally Speaking. I'm Sonia Brown.
And I'm Kenya Johnson. Legally Speaking is brought to you by the Georgia Association of Black Women Attorneys, GABWA.
GABWA is a voluntary bar association that serves as an advocate for women and children and seeks to empower our community. Please remember that this show is not intended to give legal advice. So if you have a legal concern or issue, it is always best to consult an attorney.
Statistics show that nearly 1.5 high school students experience physical violence from a dating partner in a single year. Girls and young women between the age of 16 and 24 experience the highest rates of physical violence from an intimate partner relationship, nearly 3 times the national average. Today's topic, teen dating violence and its impact on our youth and our community.
Our guests today know all too well the devastating effects of teen dating violence on our community. So when we return, we'll talk to 2 people committed to ending this practice in our community. Stay with us. There's more to come on Legally Speaking.
Hey, let go of me. You're hurting me.
I didn't like the way that guy was looking at you.
I can't help how he looked at me. Let me go.
Right. Like you didn't wear that so all the guys would look at you? You're coming with me. Let's go. Get in the car.
I don't want to leave yet. I don't want to get in the car. Let me go. You don't have to tolerate violence to be loved. If you need help, call 1-800-33-HAVEN or go to loveisrespect.org.
Welcome back to Legally Speaking. Today's topic is teen dating violence. We're joined today by DeKalb County Solicitor-General Sherry Boston and Director of Victim Assistance in Fulton County, Amanda Planchard. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Well, we're really excited to have both of you here, not so much because of the topic we're talking about, but because I know you're both very concerned about this issue and want to see teen dating violence ended in our community. So before we get into the subject at hand, Solicitor Boston, why don't you tell us a little bit about your office and how it is that you're involved in this topic, and then Ms. Planchard, if you would tell us a little bit about the Fulton Solicitor's Office and what your job entails working with victims.
Well, I currently serve as Solicitor-General for DeKalb County, which means that I oversee an office that prosecutes all the misdemeanor cases in DeKalb County. And one of the most important things that we do in our office is prosecuting domestic violence cases. Okay. And it is an issue that is of great concern for us, and one where we believe that misdemeanors truly do matter when it comes to preventing aggravated assaults and domestic violence homicides.
Wonderful. Thanks. Ms. Planchard?
Yes, so I am the Director of Victim Assistance in the Fulton County Solicitor's Office, and in that program we serve all victims of misdemeanor crimes, but more than 75% involves domestic violence or violence between family members. So it takes up a lot of time, energy, and it's an important topic to me personally as well.
Amanda, let's start off. Would you please define teen dating violence?
Sure. Teen dating violence is controlling, abusive, and aggressive behaviors that are used to exert control over a dating partner.
And Solicitor Boston, how has teen dating violence been targeted as an issue in your office?
Well, for us, we found that it was really important for us to start to get out into the community and educate teens and parents about the fact that this is a problem in young, intimate partner relationships. Dating violence does not start when you turn a magic age at 25 or 35 or 45. It starts when teens and young people start to first encounter those first dating, intimate relationships. And we felt the best way to stop domestic violence was to start teaching teens at the very youngest levels how they should be involved in healthy relationships from the time that they start dating.
And we talked about, we're saying young, we're saying teens. What are give me the extent of ages, I guess? And also, do you see some sort of average? Is it as young as 12 or 13? And to what age does that encompass youth and teen dating violence?
Well, I would include both tweens, as they're sometimes called, and teenagers, which would really put it from 11 to 18. And what we're finding is that adolescents are dating at earlier and earlier ages, and therefore violence is starting to occur in relationships earlier and earlier. And we also find that the violence tends to be more severe when the violent patterns were first exhibited during the teenage years. And so that means that it escalates over time, and adults who began the relationships as teenagers are experiencing much more serious forms of domestic violence earlier.
And I know that at the top of the show, Kenya mentioned that 1.5 million high schoolers between the ages of 16 and 24. And I know that's nationwide. Are we seeing a lot of cases in the metro area dealing with teen violence and with young people?
We definitely are. I mean, we're seeing it because it's becoming more prevalent. One of the things that I think has changed the face of dating is technology and social media and cell phones, because there are some behaviors that are exhibited through social media that are some of the initial signs that we want young people to be aware are not signs of a healthy relationship, that there are stalking tendencies, that it's aggressive behavior, that it's signs of exhibiting that control that could ultimately lead to the physical violence that we want to try to stop.
Now, in this era of celebrity obsession, what can we glean from young celebrities like Rihanna and Chris Brown in their domestic violence situation?
I worry about the normalization of violent behavior, and some studies actually show that both violence and some of the stalking or monitoring behavior that go on with technology, cell phones, social media, etc., are considered normal for a lot of teenagers. And so I'm very concerned about the young people growing up that don't see it as a crime, they don't see it as a problem or as something that is an early warning sign.
And speaking of warning signs, what are some things that parents should look out for if their teen is involved in this type of controlling and physically abusive relationship?
Well, some of the things that we educated our parents on were to look for things like isolation, meaning if all of a sudden your child has a new partner and doesn't want to hang out with any of their other friends, that somehow their partner is removing them from their other social circles. Things like incessantly with the phone and texting, always wanting to know where they are at every moment, things of that nature. Anytime that their child seems withdrawn or sullen, shy about certain things, or anytime it fears that child or teenager is frightened that they may disappoint or upset their intimate partner. Those are all signs that parents should look for, that those are signs of an unhealthy relationship.
So that's not something I know, oh, well, he's calling me all of the time, he's texting me all of the time. More signs of control rather than love.
That's true, and a lot of teenagers mistake it for love in the early time of the relationship, and then it gets more and more and more to the point where the person finds that it's disruptive to their school and their studies. Parents may notice that grades might drop as well. Also, parents oftentimes don't know how often this contact is going on. Some studies show that 30% of teens are getting texted or called on the phone, instant messaged 10, 20, 30 times an hour. And the parents aren't aware of that behavior.
Goodness. Well, what steps should a teen take if they feel that they are being victimized in a physical abuse?
I think the first step is to talk to somebody about it and to reach out for help. Whether it's to a parent, a guidance counselor, some other trusted adult. And we now have some great resources both online and on the telephone, Teen Dating Violence Hotline, for example, that can be very effective places for a teen to start and reach out for help when they're not sure if what's going on is abusive, just being able to talk it out. I think also seeking support from friends and other people in the school system might be a very effective step as well.
Now, Solicitor Boston, many people may assume that the violence is from male to female, but are there instances where teen girls are abusing the teen mates, the men?
Absolutely. I mean, the thing about domestic violence and teen dating violence is that it does not discriminate. It can be male on female, female on male, and obviously it can also and does exist in intimate partner relationships of the same gender and sex. We're seeing it all the time. And so what's important is that we can't stereotype, we can't make assumptions, we have to be open, and anybody that comes in and exhibits or says that they're being hurt in any way, whether it's emotional, physical, sexual, or financially, that we have to remember that anyone can be a victim.
And that's really great to emphasize that it can be anyone, because we tend to think, we hear adults say it all the time, I come from this type of background, I'm a lawyer, I have a master's degree in social work, I'm a counselor, whatever their position may be. It's important for our teens to know that it can happen to anybody. And I think another thing with that as well is that when we hear the word stalking, you know, I want to talk a little bit about that. What is that? What is stalking?
Well, I think people think the stereotype of stalking is some stranger that you don't know who becomes obsessed with you, and that certainly does occur. But what I find is that most stalking is from former intimate partners or former dating partners. And it's a warning sign of some serious things that are going on, and it oftentimes follows abusive and controlling behaviors that occurred during the relationship. So it's definitely something that we should take very serious.
And I want to continue along that vein, abusive and controlling behavior. We've been using the word violence. And so people tend to think maybe it's a punch, maybe it's something that's over the top. But violence begets abusive and controlling behavior. Talk to me a little bit about what the violence is that you see, so that kids recognize it doesn't have to be something that causes you a bruise even.
Well, I mean, the first thing I think that you see a lot with teens is the emotional abuse. Because that is something that they can easily use, an abuser can use on a victim, and especially with young people that have not experienced many, if any, relationships, they may not understand that that is emotional abuse. So when a partner is saying, if you loved me, you would do this, or you know, using those types of emotional love games, that is a sign of abuse that we want young people to recognize. It's just as bad as a punch, a hit, or a slap to manipulate someone with those types of emotional abuse issues.
Our guests today have provided valuable insight about teen dating violence, warning signs, risk factors. When we come back, we'll hear more from Amanda Planchard from Fulton County Victim Assistance and DeKalb County Solicitor Sherry Boston. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Legally Speaking. I'm Sonia Brown. On today's show, we're discussing teen dating violence and its devastating effects on our community. Our guests today are DeKalb County Solicitor-General Sherry Boston and Amanda Planchard, Director of Victim Assistance with the Fulton County Solicitor-General's Office. Welcome back to the show, ladies.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Amanda, is there a particular profile of a teen victim of physical abuse? Is there a warning sign or a risk factor that you may be predisposed for relationship violence?
Unfortunately, relationship abuse can happen to anyone. It has no boundaries. So there's not a specific risk factor for intimate partner violence. However, once an adolescent has been victimized in that way, they are then at risk for other future behaviors, including teen pregnancy, suicide, drug addiction, etc. So we need to be very cautious and provide services at the earliest level possible.
Well, tell us, how prevalent is this type of activity?
Unfortunately, it's been growing in prevalence, and some of the more recent studies show that 1 in 3 adolescents experience some form of physical, sexual, emotional, or verbal abuse. And unfortunately, 1 in 10 high school students report being hit, slapped, pushed, or kicked in a relationship. And so the numbers are quite startling.
So as these numbers are going up, cases are going up, the number of cases that you see in both offices. Solicitor Boston, tell me if there are challenges in prosecuting not just domestic violence cases that will involve adults, but are there other challenges involved when you have teens or young people?
Absolutely. I mean, they are similar to the challenges we face in any domestic violence case, which is oftentimes our victims are the only witnesses. And oftentimes those victims are still remaining in the relationship or back in the relationship by the time a case gets to court. It could be 2 years later and they're still within the cycle of violence or have a relationship with that person and are fearful or don't want to testify. And of course, when we don't have a victim to testify, it can be quite a challenge to prosecute that abuser.
And so Amanda, in following what the solicitor said, they're back in the relationship by the time the case comes to court, or they never left the relationship. How do you balance that as someone who's advocating or helping the victim with prosecuting the case, but maybe having to deal with the fact that the victim does not want to move forward?
It can be very challenging, and honestly, it's a stressful thing for an adult to go through, and for a teenager, it's even more difficult. But I find that you have two needs that both need to be addressed: the accountability factor, holding the abuser accountable. Reducing recidivism by having an arrest and going to court is an important goal, but equally important is the safety of the victim. And sometimes prosecution is not the safest thing for a victim to do. And so oftentimes I'm left, or victim advocates are left with supporting a victim through the process when they are being asked to testify, oftentimes when they don't want to or aren't choosing to, but also really planning for safety. And sometimes advocating with the prosecutor, with the judge, or other court personnel to increase the safety of it as much as possible.
Now, teen relationships are already difficult based on emotions and maturity level. Can these type of abusive relationships be rehabilitated at this age?
Well, the earlier you have the intervention, the better of a chance that you have of ending that violent cycle. And so I would encourage people to seek help, because the courts are one way that you can mandate that help, but you can also seek help on your own. And so there are agencies out there like Men Stopping Violence and others that address domestic violence, and I think we're learning more and more now how to create curriculums that are specific for teenagers who may be engaging in abusive behaviors.
Well, speaking of help, Solicitor Boston, are there any other programs or ways that your office supports victims of teen violence?
Well, I mean, obviously one of our goals is for our victims to be able to reach out to our victim advocates and have services. But we have tried very, very hard to get out into the community and into high schools and into forums where there are young people age 16 to 24, where we can have a dialogue about these issues, bring awareness in the community, talk to young people, talk to young women and men about what they should expect and what they should be doing in a relationship. Because as Amanda said, one of the things that we want to do is rehabilitate at the youngest possible age. We want to stop boys from hitting so that they don't become potentially men that can kill. And that's really something that we work hard at doing. And if we can catch these young people at a young age, then we can teach them and mold them and move them in the direction, hopefully, where tragedy does not strike.
Well, tell us this type of activity, physical abuse, is it a result of being abused themselves, or is it a situation where young teens can come from healthy families and be the initiators of physical abuse?
It's both. Studies show that boys who are raised in homes where they are witnessing violence are twice as likely to become abusers when they grow up. And so certainly that is a risk factor that's important. However, it is not the case that all abusers come from homes where there was abuse. Some of them come from homes where there was no domestic violence that occurred. So we need to get it at both angles.
And I think that's the most important thing, if anybody watching this show can walk away from, is that this really could happen in any situation. And that true harm can happen in any situation. We have an Atlanta boy right now that's on trial who's 18 years old for shooting and killing his 16-year-old girlfriend. And of course we hear about the tragic stories of Yardley Love at the University of Virginia and other college students that have been murdered on college campuses by their boyfriends, who are also equally a part of the campus. They are in fraternities, they are on sports teams, they are the type of people that families look at and go, that's the type of boyfriend or girlfriend that I want for my child. They're getting a great education and they come from a good family. But those kids that come from good families can equally be as harmful, abusive, and hurt or even worse, kill a victim.
And we hear this, we hear it's not just a slap, it's not just a hit, all the way up to murder.